Schoolhouse Rock for 2025, helping kids specifically working on their digital literacy and making sure that we give them the skills and the understanding so that they can explore and navigate the new tech landscape safely and securely. That's the mission.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
How can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
Today on Mad Warfare, we're asking a simple question. Kids, can cartoons save democracy? I'm Jocelyn Brady.
And fumbling to get off the mute, I am Sean Guillory.
Our guest today is a former child actor, hello Broadway, a CIA operations veteran, and a Hollywood consultant, most recently on Paramount Plus's The Agency, starring Michael Fassbender, a show I love. Because unicorns exist. And he is now on a mission where these worlds collide, blending tradecraft and storytelling to teach kids how to spot manipulation and propaganda in a way that's fun, because it's for kids, you know. Please welcome, everyone, Gus Kangas.
Really appreciate being on here with you guys.
I have to ask, with that background, does one need to have a professional acting resume to succeed in the CIA?
Well, I will say that it certainly helps. The idea of being able to portray a certain character, certain role, give off a certain identity. You know, we often say in my former employer's business, perception's reality. And how you're perceived is how someone else, or how they perceive you, will be the reality that sticks with them. And so I think growing up, being a child actor, understanding about how to get into character, into role, and then performing, especially on live stage, and seeing an audience believe what it is that you're trying to convey, sometimes without even speaking, just by the way that you're moving and presenting yourself, certainly stuck with me. And although you don't have to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild to work for the CIA, I definitely think it helped.
It's really fascinating. Do people in the CIA, like doing that kind of work, I mean, can I say it's spy work? I mean, doing that kind of work, do you get training on how to present yourself in a certain way, the kind of training an actor might get?
I would say tradecraft, it's a craft, just like it would be in the entertainment industry. It's understanding about human empathy and how to connect with your audience, which could be either one person or a group of people, and being able to authentically present to them what it is that you're trying to convey. And that could be as simple as the first time that you're meeting someone, in order to build that rapport with them, to a much more in-depth conversation where it's critically important, just like it is in negotiations and just like it is in other parts of the government or business, that they understand what you stand for, they understand what it is that you're trying to convey, and you understand what they need in return. And it's a human relationship. And so the training that I received is very similar to, I used to say, it's like what you learned when you started dating, right? You go into a room and you look around and you see people, and maybe there's someone that you first look at them and you're like, I want to go talk to that person. And then as you walk towards them, maybe you notice that they're wearing a sweatshirt for a university that you're familiar with, or a sports team, or maybe there's something else about the way that they're dressed that you immediately identify a potential connection that you might have with them. And so when you go up to talk to them, you're immediately in the back of your mind thinking, who is this person? What do I find interesting about them? What am I hearing from them? Active listening is really important. Instead of trying to think what the next thing is you're going to say before they finish their sentence, actually listening to what they say. you'd be surprised how often when you're talking with someone, they're telling you the things that you can then build a conversation off of and a relationship off of. I mean, we often say when you talk to someone, the thing they most want to talk about is themselves.
I'm curious about, I think about, and forgive my naivete, but I did some child acting too. But I'm thinking about, it's my debut. But I'm thinking about getting into character and people who go really deep into it, like method acting, and how that might compare or help people understand the comparison to tradecraft, and how do you keep your mind in order when you're playing a character and then flipping the script and coming back out into your quote unquote real life? Like how do you care for your mental well-being in that space?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's a great question. And in fact, I know you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that you're a big fan of the agency. I hope you saw some of that in the character that Michael Fassbender plays, because you're 100% right. We often say you have to be able to turn it on and turn it off, because when you assume either acting as a character or in my former profession, there's residual on you after you're done being that character. And so you really have to be able to find a way to bifurcate the role or the person that you're portraying or the reality that you're shaping while you're interacting with someone and who you actually really are, because they're not always the same person. And that's important, because if you don't have the ability to turn it on and turn it off, then when are you your authentic self? When are you your real true self? And how does that line blur where you sometimes then might forget, who is Gus? Who am I really? Am I the person who I just was in a dinner conversation with? Is that me? Is it the father when I go home and I'm helping my kids? Is that me? Well, I mean, yes, it's all of those, but there are times where you have to be present for the role that you're in. And if that's to being who I am with my family, then I need to make sure that I'm grounded in that. And if it's to be portraying a different type of person to a different audience or a specific individual, I have to be on, and I have to make sure that during that period, I am 100% authentically that person. You can get fractured for sure if you don't have those ways to stay bifurcated and make sure that you know when to turn it on and then also when to turn it off.
All right, fractured. That's a good word. In terms of like other analogous things, because on this show we talk about pro wrestling every once in a while. Again, it was the second episode for Pete's sake. They call it like pro wrestling living the gimmick. And there was a thing back in the day where they really wanted to portray this as like a real sport. If that was your character, you had to be that character at the bar or at a kind of thing that you were at in public. But there's this term called living the gimmick. And you do hear some of these old wrestlers who are very, very popular because it feels like that has to really be him. And I don't know how much there is in terms of like Ric Flair, in terms of like he's kind of Ric Flair all the time. And that actually has kind of led to some unfortunate circumstances in his real life. I do just think in terms of even acting, like, what if Jaleel White had to act like Urkel all the time and you can't turn it off? Or Ed Varney had to act like Ernest like all the time?
I mean, there's an authentic self that's in everything that you do. The job that I used to do when the stakes are so high, you find that, and I think we all say this often, the easiest lie is the one that's mostly embedded in the truth. And so there's always going to be a strong element of you yourself in any character that you play or portray, right? Because you're drawing on a lot of times past experience to influence and inform a future engagement. There'll be some differences there, obviously, between the pro wrestler who is at the bar and has to stay in that same character because who knows when that would-be fan is going to come up and they don't want to ever damage their brand by not, by being incongruent with who they are when they're on the television or on the stage or on the wrestling mat, and then who they might be when they're at Costco or at a local bar. for what I did for a living, it's slightly different, but there are similarities in that I'm always going to be who I am. I'd like to think, I'm generous, I'm empathetic, I'm creative. Those things are always going to be there. The nuances or the changes are going to be more in who I may be engaging with and how I'm mirroring who they are. And a lot of times, I mean, you just end up finding those commonalities. Like I said earlier, when you go and even if you're a freshman at university, right? Your first day in a big class of 300 people, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to look for people who, for some reason, right, but you're going to look for people for some reason that you already find a connection with. And at first, before you even talk to them, it's going to be usually what they're wearing or how they appear. And there's going to be some historical tie to something that they embody and what you feel comfortable with in order to be able to approach them. And then from there, you find those commonalities, you have those discussions. And then over time, you really do build a relationship, trust, rapport. And that's true no matter what the job is. I mean, arguably, if you're going to be successful. And it's no different with what I did for a living.
Excellent point.
The other thing, too, is I know we talked briefly about turning it on and turning it off. There's another aspect of it, too. When we talk about tradecraft, well, when you're doing something operational, there's a lot of things that are going on, right, all at once. And you're in a very hyper-vigilant state of mind during that period of time for, am I being followed? Mm-hmm. Are there things going on around me that could negatively or adversely impact what I'm trying to do? And so you can't stay hyper-vigilant forever. I mean, you do have to then come back to a more normal state. And, if it's meditation, if it's reading, if it's exercise, you do have to find outlets to allow some of that to dissipate, because otherwise you'll either burn yourself out, or over time, it's really hard then to be able to turn it on and turn it off because you only know one setting.
Yeah. Is that why usually when people talk about rehab, they think it's just for like drugs or kind of substance, but is that also why sometimes actors, after even like a big role and maybe even they had to like really encapsulate or even like lose or gain a bunch of weight, is that why they sometimes will just like, all right, I'm going to rehab because I need that like time to find myself again as a person outside the role?
I mean, I would say it's emotionally exhausting to authentically play a role that is not just playing yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to have to think about, and it's not even just the emotional piece of it. It's the physical. Like, is my gait different? How do I speak? How does this character think? Is their education different than my own personal education? Mm-hmm. And if so, how do I adapt myself to authentically portray or convey to an audience that who they're seeing is authentically the character that I'm creating?
I do want to touch back on The Agency because I love that show. It was the first time I remember seeing a character doing this type of work, like really wrestling with his identity and his allegiance, who he is and who he serves and who he answers to. It was fascinating to see that like psychological profiling and insight. And when you are called on to consult on a project like this, is that the sort of, what does that look like? Are you asked to consult on the mindset of the character, on the scripting, on the dialogue, on the action scenes, or is it like the whole gamut? What does that kind of work look like?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate to be asked to come in early on that project. And so to answer your question, yes, it was all of it. I had the opportunity to work not only with the script, but I also got to work with the set design folks, the costume design folks, the people that are responsible for all of the props. And again, it was all to try to add that additional layer of authenticity to the story, right? Because the devil's in the details, and there are things that you wear, for example, or you don't wear. There are different offices or different places that you do the work, some of which look very much like government facilities, and others, like in The Agency, look from the outside to be like a music studio, and then you go inside and it's a safe house, right? So what I really liked was the ability to help shape some of the more authentic details beyond what was already an amazing script and dialogue between characters. And then the real interplay between some of the characters, because, you mentioned Deep Undercover. In the agency, the main character, Michael Fassbender's character, Martian, is gone for 6 years, deep undercover, with minimal, if no, contact with his daughter. And so, as you know, when he gets back, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone in the audience who hasn't watched it, but when he gets back, she's 16. She was 10 when he left. And so you can only imagine what types of sacrifices officers go through when they take on a job like the character that Michael Fassbender plays takes on in order to do the mission, in order to support our country's goals and objectives, our national security. He leaves his family. He leaves his daughter for 6 years. And the kind of sacrifices and toll that puts on her as well, going from being a 10-year-old to when he gets back, I mean, she's, on the verge of being a young woman. She's gone through a gamut of different changes, and he hasn't been around for any of those. And being a father who has a daughter, and I experienced some of that myself, that really resonated with me. And I wanted to make sure that wasn't lost on the audience, because yes, there's action. Yes, sometimes there's car chases, and there's other things that make these shows really exciting and entertaining. But also, there's a real human element, and it gets hard sometimes, right? It's not all you win at the end of the day, defeat the villain, closing scene where there's the champagne on the yacht with the sun setting. Sometimes it's a broken family. It's dysfunctionality. It's leaving a country and not saying goodbye to certain people, or just disappearing and leaving people wondering, well, where did that person go? Who were they? Because that's just what you have to do.
That's the extra twist that's so difficult, because you have people going overseas, but then also adding you cannot contact these people that you love is wild.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously some of it's creative license, right? I mean, there's authenticity, and then there's good storytelling. And sometimes, authenticity won't get in the way of good storytelling. So there are things that even in the agency are obviously over dramatized so that they keep the audience gripped to the edge of their seat. Because, I mean, honestly, my day-to-day job would probably, some people would they'd be like, really? Is that what you do? I mean, I remember when I told my daughter when she was old enough what I did for a living, and she laughed. She was like, Dad, you're not cool enough to do that. And I was like, yeah, if you only knew. There are those moments, we used to joke, you sign up to be James Bond and you end up being Moneypenny. There are those moments that are like, wow, I was a part of that. And then there's a lot of downtime, and there's a lot of paperwork and other parts of it that you don't normally see.
What do you wish that Hollywood could learn from intelligence, or intelligence could learn from Hollywood?
I'm glad you asked that.
The idea that storytelling is a strategic soft power, and that
yes.
you can entertain, but you can also educate, you can influence and inform through television, through film, and that there's an opportunity to serve a higher purpose by telling stories that help the public understand perhaps some of the challenges that we face as a country, as a people, individual families. And I'll give you some examples. So I just finished watching Zero Day. It was a Netflix series. Great. Robert De Niro, several other actors and actresses in it. And it's about, what happens if there's a zero day that for a minute, I think the entire power grid, all the infrastructure goes out.
And for the folks who don't know that in the audience, can you explain what a 0 day is? I'll give that to you. If you want me to do it, I could do it too. Yeah.
God, I mean, please, by all means. I don't want to.
So it's a cyber vulnerability in like a computer product. So there's many different things that you can use a 0 day for, but it is not known publicly, because there's different places where you can publicly kind of let folks know. And usually in terms of the U.S., it would be like a CISA, or DIS if it's on like the defense end, that they publicly kind of let folks know about these vulnerabilities existing so the companies can patch it up, or other sort of things you may like, okay, avoid using this software until they patch it up.
Right. Go change your passwords, everyone. Kind of
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that too. Like, it's just good hygiene, if anything.
But that's a great point, Sean. I mean, again, the show doesn't tell you everything that you just did, Sean. But what the show does do, I think, is in a very entertaining way, in a very scary, entertaining way, it lets people know about these potential vulnerabilities. And I think it elevates, hopefully, our understanding of cybersecurity. And, there's been a history of these types of programs that come out that I think do a good job of both, again, entertaining, but also educating. I know we've previously talked about, 1983 seemed to be a big year for this. We had WarGames came out, and we also had The Day After. And as we know, talking about cybersecurity, WarGames, not only did it terrify the public, but in fact, President Reagan at the time, after watching that, decided we really need to have more secure infrastructure, and we need to really look into the possibility that in the scenario of WarGames, a young kid hacker could almost drive us to nuclear war. And then talking about nuclear war, we have The Day After Tomorrow, small midtown Kansas City, and the aftermath of a nuclear attack. And again, President Reagan,
John Lithgow, but go on.
Prior to watching that, I think was very much about nuclear armament and deterrence through a mutually assured destruction, and then realized after watching that nuclear disarmament is 100% the way to go, and we can't ever expose American public to this type of devastation. We need to do things in order to de-escalate. And so he changed his policy as a result of that. And if you go even further back, we talked before about World War II. You had Frank Capra, Why We Fight. President Roosevelt at the time recognized that we needed to tell the American people, first the American soldiers and then the American people, why we should care about trying to stop the Axis, why we should be involved in a war in Europe against authoritarianism and Nazi Germany. And so Frank Capra put together 7 short films to do that. And it had a significant impact on helping the American public understand what was truly at stake. But it was because it touched people in their hearts, not their heads. It helped them to understand and feel emotionally what could happen, how this wasn't just a problem on European soil. And again, John Ford did the same thing with the Battle of Midway, being able to show the battle, but then also interweaving stories of the actual individuals that were involved by talking to people back in their hometowns about, who this person was, who that person was. Because again, it was not only authentic storytelling, but it was emotionally compelling. And that's a real gift that our entertainment industry in Hollywood has, is we have such gifted, talented storytellers. And these types of stories are important because they can really change the course of this country's direction. These can change the course of history. So that would be my advice or my suggestion to Hollywood, is to continue to look for these authentic stories, either being about real heroes and the real sacrifices and the challenges, because they're everyday people. They're our friends and our colleagues when we're in line at the grocery store. Like, we just went through a pandemic. The first responders are real heroes. In LA, we just went through the fires. Firefighters, first responders, real heroes. And like, those are for me in particular, those are the American values. That's the idea that we take care of each other, that it's all about community. It's about being a servant leader. The idea that this country was founded on innovation and creativity and perseverance, and that we are a resilient country, and that we have all of these characteristics. They embody who we are. It's okay to be messy, but it's also okay to not always have the answers, but work within your community to help solve those problems. And those are the kinds of stories I think that sometimes we forget, or we go through ebbs and flows, right? 1980s, we had Rambo and Red Dawn and Rocky and Top Gun. I mean, Top Gun. there were more pilots in the Air Force, even though it was a Navy film, after Top Gun. The recruitment went through the roof. There's a history of showing how authentic storytelling can really help support and shape and benefit not only the generation that's watching it, but the generations to come.
I wonder if there's something to like encourage. Are there stuff like grants or something to be like, yeah, talk about these authentic American kind of like hero stories that can go out there that would at least pay for like the base stuff production wise? That I'd hope something like that could encourage maybe more of these stories versus maybe some of these studios that may have the fear of like, it has to make back money, and I don't have any proof right now that this will make back money unless it has Tony Stark in it.
Well, I mean, certainly, State Department had those types of programs for overseas audiences.
That's
and
right.
and I'm sure that at the state level, you can find communities of interest that promote different, either veteran storytellers or things similar to that. I may have mentioned it to you guys last time. So one of the things that I'm involved in now is a startup company called Vigilant Pictures. And the Vigilant Pictures ethos is just that, to go back to telling authentic stories about real heroes, not superheroes. We're slowly but surely working on being able to identify, sources of funding to help tell some of those stories. Yeah. There's a real audience and there's a real interest out there. But like anything else, as we know, the entertainment industry right now in the U.S. has gone through, I think some people call it the triple threat, right? The pandemic, the writer's strike, the actor's strike, the most recent fires. There's also been a real challenge because in that time, a lot of our productions have gone offshore because of financial incentives that other countries offer if we shoot our films, if we produce our films or our television series in those countries. So we've got a lot of challenges to overcome, but I do know that there are a lot of states right now who are pushing new legislation and have some already in place to try to incentivize and create more opportunities for especially small independent film companies like ours to do just that.
For folks who are interested in like telling these stories from the real heroes in our nation, please reach out to Gus on that.
Yeah, thank you. And again, heroes come in all shapes and sizes, right? We're not just talking about your military veterans or your active duty military or paramilitary or CIA. We're talking about firefighters, first responders, our police. But we're also talking about people who survive horrific, it could be natural disasters, it could be terrorist attacks, and they fight to survive. And even though they would never consider themselves heroes, they act heroically. And again, if I'm watching a show and I see that, maybe there's a part of me that I leave that theater going, could I do that? For me, the sign of a good movie is one that when I'm done watching it, I keep thinking about it. I keep thinking about the message, the stories, the characters, and then I find other people who are still interested in talking about it as well.
What's on your mind now, top of mind, are movies that have stuck with you or that you're thinking about currently?
Right now, I'm thinking a lot about this really interesting place that we find ourselves in with information overload, data, the amount of information that we have access to, as well as some of the challenges that we face as a result of, rightfully so, being such an open society where we have so much data that we can gain access to, but that so much of our data is also accessible. So I'm reading a book right now, Genesis. It's the AI book. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger co-authored it with...
now I know what you're talking about. Gotcha.
Yeah, Eric Schmidt. And so reading it, it's super interesting, but it's also super terrifying because when I'm reading it, I'm thinking of Skynet and I'm thinking back to like Terminator. And so I think we're at a really interesting time right now with AI. We talk about generative AI, we talk about agentic AI. It's super, super exciting. The idea that we can find cures to medical problems, that we can do research and explore in ways that our human minds currently are limited in our ability to absorb that much information, analyze it, and then provide output as quickly as the AI can. But I'm also really super concerned about the vulnerability of said AI and the security and safety protocols that will be in place to ensure that the information that we get out is hopefully as authentic as the information we put in. And obviously there are a lot of challenges to that. So that's one thing I'm thinking about. And then Jocelyn, you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast about, can we teach kids democracy through cartoons? Well, one of the other things that I've been thinking a lot about as of late is Schoolhouse Rock. And what's crazy about that is that was 40 years ago for me. And yet I bet a lot of our audience, either who watched it themselves or know about it afterwards, could hum or recite some of those jingles, right? Like how a bill becomes a law, or lolly, 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 get your adverbs here, or interjection, or
Conjunction, what's your function?
It could be a contest. We just keep rolling it off.
But I'm just saying, so what was it about Schoolhouse Rock that, now 40 plus years later, I can still recite those things? And if I think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, I learned what a conjunction was. I learned, how a bill became a law. I was given a civics lesson, even though I couldn't even probably spell civics, or I didn't, would know what civics was back then. And how is it that it was so sticky and it was so animated and musically produced and so creative, and yet wedged in between my Saturday morning cartoons, that they had a captivated audience? And yet I can still think about it. That message stuck with me. I couldn't tell you what I did last week, but I could still tell you about Interplanet Janet, right? So something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is, what is that Schoolhouse Rock for 2025 look like? And what is the messages that we would want to convey? And for me, again, because I have kids and they've grown up with cell phones and access to the internet and social media, it's digital. For me, it's like, how do we maybe teach our kids digital literacy? How do we talk more about digital privacy, or how to keep your location private, or what should you know about the information that's being pushed to you on these social media platforms because of the algorithms on what you're clicking on, what they get you to click on, phishing, like how do you protect yourself from like falling prey to a scam? But how do you do it in a way that's entertaining, that's fun, right? Jocelyn said that in the very beginning, and that's like key to all of this, is fun, and it's sticky. So it's gonna stay with them. I mean, Schoolhouse Rock was, I don't know, just under maybe 3 minutes when it came out. But again, it was the television. I was glued in front of the television. I wasn't going anywhere for that 3 minutes. So they had me, captivated audience. But nowadays, as we know, 30 seconds and like you're done, 60 seconds and you're really lucky. So I've been putting a lot of thought, actually, Jocelyn, to that right now, which is how to create this 2025 Schoolhouse Rock. What would it look like? Where would you put it, right? Would you put it, like, I have a son who plays video games. Would you put it in the staging area as a brief little 30-second clip while he and his friends are waiting to go into their next
the Fortnite
mission?
lounge. Yeah.
Right. Do you put it on YouTube Shorts? Do you put it on YouTube Kids? I mean, I think there's the good thing about it is it's a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing is that there's so many different platforms now that you could put a small message and it could be fun, it could be musical, it could be whimsical, it could be entertaining, and it could be sticky. And then the curse is there's so many platforms that kids have so much information being thrown at them. But I think that there's a real opportunity here to recapture the magic that was the messaging that Schoolhouse Rock was able to do, but do it smart, like in a much more slick and fun and creative way that will get kids to think, right? Because here's the thing is, like, I don't want kids, I'm not going to tell kids what to think. I just want to help them understand how to think. Like, if you see a piece of information, how do you know it's true? One of the things I talk about here at home is, before you believe the picture, understand the frame. Right? Because there's so much information that's coming at us now, and with AI, we've been talking about deep fakes. There's like it's so hard these days for kids to be able to look at something and not emotionally feel that they have to act on it before they can maybe sit back for a second and think more about what it is that they're seeing or experiencing before they do something about it. And so, yeah, I think that's another great area for a different aspect of the entertainment industry to get involved in, and I'm planning to be a part of that. And that is to help, again, provide digital literacy to kids when they're young and they're vulnerable, and yet they have access to an infinite amount of information. And again, I understand that it's a parent's decision what access they give their children when it comes to the internet and media, but it's ubiquitous, right? It's everywhere and it's everything. And at some point, we hope that we've taught our kids how best to maintain their digital hygiene. But in reality, if I get up and I tell, my kids, do this, don't do that, watch out for this, it's like a PSA. And we know no one listens to PSAs. Sorry for all you out there who do PSAs, but nobody listens to them because they don't want to be preached to. So let's make it educational, but more importantly, let's make it fun and entertaining.
Oh, you mean cracking the egg into the frying pan isn't going to stop me from... Oh,
no,
man.
It's going to make you want to go eat. That's what it's going to make you want to go
exactly. Yeah. It's early enough in the day.
Maybe if I get real high first, I'll have an appetite.
Yeah.
I want to foot stomp again how good of an idea this is in terms of like what, or just at least that question of what a Schoolhouse Rock would look like in 2025.
And the how it evokes for me, I think we talked about this before, whenever I watch something that I wish I had come up with, it's like just sticks, right? And that's Inside Out. I just think it's genius. Yeah. It's genius. You're bringing to life emotions as characters and teaching edutainment, right? Because you're teaching people, kids especially, that you have these feelings and they all have these little characteristics, and it really helps you identify them and have empathy for yourself and these things that come up. And so that's also what your idea, Gus, is bringing up for me, is like these personas or characters for whatever they are, the phishing attacks and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, we joked about it a little bit when we talked previously, but Firewall Fred, right? I mean, you could have this like brick guy with like flames, and it's Firewall Fred, but Firewall Fred helps to protect you, right? So I do. I think there's a unique opportunity right now because we are on the precipice of another technological evolution through the future evolving of the AI that we already have access to. And so the children today, they're going to be the ones that are going to be in the workforce, and they're going to dealing with this kind of like I'm reflecting now on how a bill becomes a law. They're going to be, reflecting on how AI helped form the way that they exist, much more so than we can even imagine now. So let's give them the tools to, again, help them on how to think, not what to think. And let's give them the armor, right? That digital armor to protect themselves while they are exploring all of the amazing and unique opportunities that this technology also provides and will offer them. Again, this is a work in progress, so I will have more information and I will share it with you guys as it crystallizes, and then we can see how we can work together, because you talk about mutually assured distraction, right? This is already a great distractor. I mean, the amount of time that kids spend on their phones instead of in the real world is, at least in my household, it's pretty significant. Schoolhouse Rock for 2025, helping kids specifically working on their digital literacy and making sure that we give them the skills and the understanding so that they can explore and navigate the new tech landscape safely and securely. That's the mission.
And there'll be audience there, because take my 10-year-old. My 10-year-old, I don't consider him a very emotional. Again, the last time I remember him crying a few months ago is he was convinced somebody hacked his Roblox account. So I'm sure little Roman Guillory will be all eyes on anything we put out that can protect him around that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any other any parting tips, words of wisdoms, or pleas for folks out there in line with anything we've talked about in, security, intelligence, kids, edutainment for good?
Don't confuse information with wisdom, right? There's a lot of information that's out there, and some of it's factually correct and some of it's not. And it is important to, we always say trust but verify, right? Like we talk about cognitive warfare. There's ways that we can protect ourselves. There's ways that we can put armor on to prepare ourselves for the onslaught of information that's just coming at us in this tsunami of data. But just know that a lot of that information, it's meant to evoke an emotional response well before it evokes a mental response. And that's the challenge, right? Because once the genie's out of the bottle and once you feel a certain way about something, you're already starting to act on it before you even realize it. And so I think we have to just all collectively work harder at conditioning ourselves to not immediately respond when we see something. And so I think it's just knowing that anytime that you come in contact with information, in the back of your mind, just, before you act, just try to discern whether what you're seeing is real or not.
And with that in mind, because we've kind of thrown down two challenges, I wouldn't mind throwing down a third one as well. The first one would be what you're doing with Vigilant Pictures and trying to show those real stories of the real heroes. The second one we talked about would be the Schoolhouse Rock, what would it look like in the modern day. We talked about like the day after tomorrow and what it did in terms of nuclear kind of policy. I would love to see, again, that kind of story. What would be the day after tomorrow when it comes to like information and cognitive warfare? That folks really get it, folks on the Hill really get it, and kind of moves things to policy. Why we wanted to start the show to begin with, because I have writings out there, I put it out there, but I kind of realized after a while that I was doing more telling than showing. And part of the things I want to encourage with folks is like, how can we show more than we tell to kind of move to policies, kind of like the day after, what the day after tomorrow did in terms of that. So if there was a third challenge, I would love to see more of those stories, like the things you've read in Genesis, get to the screen to kind of like folks get in, especially folks on the Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to tell those stories. And I think there's a lot of different mediums to do that. There's a lot of people that listen to your show, and I'm sure they've got their own ideas as well, and I'm sure they'll send you some via your email address.
Encourage them. Encourage that audience. You could do it, audience. You could do it.
Absolutely. And it may even be something where you start, think globally, act locally. That's another one that I remember. But maybe you do. You start in your local community and you do something. Or maybe it's writing a story that turns into a screenplay, that turns into something else. But everybody, that's how we communicate. We're all, our brains are wired for stories. So every listener, every one of your audience members is a storyteller. And that would be my other parting note is don't ever forget that. Everything that we do is storytelling, and every one of you is a storyteller. So tell your story and help others.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is my love language, so I really appreciate it. How can people find you if you'd like to be found?
Yeah,
good point.
Which is a complete reversal. So I spent my entire career not trying to be found, and now I'm like, find me. Well, I am on LinkedIn. And again, if you go to vigilant.pictures, you'll find us as well. And then we also have an Instagram channel called The Vigilant Heroes, all one word. So there's definitely different ways to find me. And again, I'm always interested in hearing other people's stories. And Jocelyn, to your point, we're a community of storytellers, and we can't forget the power of story and how even if one person shares your story, it may change or make a difference in their lives, let alone other people's.
You might not see your impact, but it's happening. Gus, real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It was a real pleasure to be on today. Thank you to you, Jocelyn, and Sean, to you as well. This is the beginning of, I think, an opportunity for us to continue to figure out ways to collaborate together. So I look forward to that. And to your audience, thanks for tuning in and listening to me rant and rave for the length of this episode.
Thank you so much for being on the show, sir.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel the say. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel the say. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel the say. Cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me.